Hello, my name is Tendai Malombo and this is RealTalk. Now, the past couple of days have been rather tumultuous for Zimbabweans after the president made an announcement on currency reforms. Some of these reforms were rather alarming and others caused great speculation that the economy was indeed taking a nosedive. Today we have Professor Gift Mugano, an economist, here with us to help us get a better understanding of where our economy stands. Professor Mugano is a holder of a Ph.D. in economics, which he acquired from the Nelson Mandela University in South Africa. He's a professor of economics at the University of Zimbabwe's Business School and a distinguished scholar. He's also a global authority on international trade and finance and a technocrat with over 17 years of extensive experience, including lecturing, research and publications, policy advisory, and consultancy work. Professor Mugano has consulted for the World Bank, United Nations, the USAID, the UK Aid, Germany Agency for International Cooperation, International Labour Organization, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, and for the government of Zimbabwe, and is here to help us understand our economy. Thank you so much for joining us on our show, Professor. Thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure.
All right. So you remember in 2019, the government announced some currency reforms and reintroduced the Zim dollar, right? But ever since then, the local currency has been losing its value and failing to hold its ground against the US dollar. People have been living in poverty continually. And in your honest and informed opinion, have the reforms been a success or a failure?
The reforms has been a failure, clearly because when the currency was introduced, the minimum fundamentals for any currency to be introduced were not available. For example, when you're introducing a local currency, you must have a single-digit inflation, and at that time, inflation was close to 500%. You must also have a current account surplus. So when you're exporting and importing and the foreign currency generation, you must have a surplus. You must have fiscal consolidation, meaning that you must not have debt, national debt. You must clear your national debt because a debt also erodes our currency. Then the fourth one is that you must have a stable exchange rate. At that point in time, we had gone to interbank. We were using interbank rate, and it was also increasing. You must have a budget surplus, because when you have a surplus, you then don't go for the bank to borrow money to support the budget, which will take you again into currency crisis. The final one, you must be a productive economy. Because in economics, we say that the strength of the currency is reflected in its production capacity. So we are not a productive economy. Our industries are not working very well across sectors of the economy. And to make things worse, there are serious disruptions which are being caused by government programs such as command agriculture. It's not encouraging production, rather it's disturbing the value chain, because when government is giving free inputs, free money, banks cannot lend properly or efficiently in the productive sector because someone is getting it for free. Companies which are also involved in value chain financing, like contract farming, also find it very difficult to contract the very same farmer who is getting free inputs. For example, in cotton, there's no way in which a company, Mugano Holding, will be able to contract a cotton farmer to produce a commodity under a contract farming, under a clear business contract, when the government is coming on your doorstep and give you everything for free, and they don't then ask you to pay back. So we introduced our currency by force, and as expected, it crashed. And on end of March 2020, we went into dual currency when the central bank governor advised business to start now pricing in US dollar. Yeah.
All right, so we'll touch on that a little bit later. But so you're saying the reforms of 2019 were a failure, dismally. It has not done well at all.
Yes, they failed dismally. There's no question about that.
Yes, but then the government is saying that they have met all the fundamentals right now and that we are stable enough to have our own currency. What is your take on that?
Which fundamental do they have? Inflation now is getting to above 100% against the annual target of 25 to 30%. I'm quite convinced that by end of this month, inflation will be around 115, 120% annual inflation. The exchange rate right now is around 450 against $1 US. We have drought of production. We are not producing enough. We have shortages. We have budget deficits. Minister of Finance has no surplus. The surplus is just on paper. Practically, they are spending more than what they are collecting. In fact, for example, end of year 2021, the deficit was around 25% of the total budget. I would say in the region of $120 billion against a budget of $430 billion. So which fundamentals are all right, which can support the currency? We have a debt which have already increased from $10 billion US in 2018 now to $18.373 billion according to IMF. And that's against fiscal consolidation. We've increased our debt by $8 billion or so within 3 years. Everything is working against us. The budget deficit, we have $1.5 billion end of year, last year. We have no currency reserves, foreign currency reserves. We must have at least 6 months import cover. We must have foreign currency in our banks, in our central bank, which should help us to take us through 6 months, assuming we're not exporting anything. We have nothing. That's why you see that the backlog at the auction system is taking 4 months. Yesterday, they allocated money. Do you know how much they gave industry? $6.8 million. Is it a country which can allocate $6.8 million, or we are now a company? So we don't have the fundamentals in place to support any local currency right now.
So in your opinion, who is to blame? Because on the one hand, analysts such as yourself are saying it's because of government spending that we're in this situation, right? But on the other hand, the government is saying that it's behavioral economics that's causing all these problems. So in your opinion, have the authorities failed?
Yes, they failed dismally. Who am I going to blame if you have government which is developing policies which are useless, policies which are going against the basic fundamentals of what is expected from a government? You tell government, don't finance infrastructure with cash. There's no way in the world where you can see a reasonable government financing infrastructure with the cash. Infrastructure is a long-term project. You use a long-term finance, for example, bonds, use diaspora bonds, use sovereign bond, use public-private partnerships. But we are using cash, and we are saying cash. So it doesn't make any sense. And that money is finding itself in the black market. Because when you are given cash, if you are Chinese, you don't take Zimbabwean dollar cash to China. You burn it to get US dollars. Even if it's a Zimbabwean contractor, once you are given those payments in cash, naturally they buy foreign currency to preserve their money. And most importantly, they pay Zimbabwean dollars, right? And some of the components required in construction are foreign, they require foreign currency. So we have to buy foreign currency in the black market. So government is to blame. They finance agriculture.
Entirely. The government is to blame entirely.
They take the lion's share of the blame.
But what about the behavioral economics that they're referring to?
No,
what can you say
if you put a cat on the corner there and you're fighting to kill the cat, it will scratch you. So you can consider the behavior as a reaction for survival because you want to take my neck. Look at what they did just on the 7th of May. The president announcing to suspend lending. Who has ever done that? You can't suspend lending because the financial sector is integrated in the economy, right? And you are cutting the lifeline. And if someone is now buying foreign currency to manage, if I'm a bank and I begin to buy foreign currency, because I cannot lend, I can't do anything, and I get 50% of my money from income received from interest rate, and I'm now doing anything which I am doing, pouncing on to make a survival, you say I am wrong. No, you can't say that. When I'm making noise after you beat me, you must not say I must not make noise. So that's what is happening. And you know what? These issues we have been telling government, right, that don't use short-term finance or cash to finance infrastructure. Government is adamant because they're interested. Those who are in construction are government cronies, right? You tell them in agriculture, you cannot go and fund maize for a milling company. You know the big milling company that you have in this country?
GMP.
The National Foods, Brewbone, you name it. They have capacity to go and finance farmers through contract farming. And you say, don't do that. We're going to produce maize for you and we'll give you on your doorstep. Why are you doing that? Did you ever see any shortage of tobacco in this country? Since the year 2000, there was no government. It was a purely contract farming, and the tobacco is sold on auction floor, which is not GMB, and an auction floor is a replica of a commodity exchange. But don't we have shortages in food side? We have serious shortages. If a grain...
Is it the interruptions that you're talking about?
Yes, because government is in there. It's a disruption. It's disrupting the whole value chain.
Because of this interest that you have spoken about. So...
Yeah, because they come in they give people free inputs. You know, the PEMSEC of Finance, George Guamatanga.
Yes.
In one interview with the local media, it was last year, he said that there's a debt which is growing on the command agriculture. And he was bragging that, I think this 2021, they managed to recover a significant amount of money, which was 25% of the total amount of money lent out. And he's a banker, by the way. And he said they made progress. They recovered only 1/4. So which means 75% is not recovered. Why? Because these people are not paying back because these are government freebies, right? So do you think someone who is a farmer, who is connected to government, would get a contract agreement with say, National Foods to produce maize and do a real business agreement, or you just wait for government free inputs and get them for free and don't pay back?
So it's sort of like a welfare system.
The welfare system is they're politicizing it. Okay. And you could also have a sense that they used it for campaigning, because now we have 2.3 million households which are getting free inputs from 1.8 million households. They're building their votes using the money. And it's more like the 1998 of the war veteran free money to the economy, where we are today.
So it's always a danger when politics is mixed with economics, because then the entire country suffers.
Clearly, it's a danger.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for that. We are just going to take a very short break and we'll be back after this.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome back to our second segment. Thank you so much for joining us. Professor Mugano, you know, we want to go back to the end of June in 2020 when the RBZ introduced the Dutch auction system, and they promised that it would help stabilize the Zim dollar. All right. And to date, billions of dollars have been traded on this platform, but without stability at all. The currency has just spiraled. It's continued to spiral. And a paper by the CZI indicates that this auction is not truly market-driven and is promoting arbitrage opportunities in the economy. What is your assessment of this?
It's a correct observation by CZI. You know, a Dutch auction system has got 3 basic principles. The first one is that when you go for an auction, you must know how much money is available. So central bank must make sure they advise the public that...
No, when you say money, which kind of
US
money
dollar,
are you...
The US dollar. Yes. Because you are going to be bidding for the US dollars. So there's need, the central bank has failed to advise deliberately, so of course, because they know the public how much money is available. Because you cannot bid for something which you don't know. Like, for example, when you go for a car auction, you know the types of cars which are there and the number of cars which are there, and they make everything. So when you are going to bid, you prepare yourself to go and bid for a particular type of car. So people were bidding in darkness, right? So they violated that principle of transparency to the public. The second one is that when you go and bid for a car, do you get an average price of the car for that day? You are given the car as the highest bidder. So they never followed the rules of a highest bidder. So you see a lowest bidder and the highest bidder, then they say weighted average so much. So it's encouraging lower bidders, because those low bidders will come and weigh down the price. then you have a wrong average exchange rate for the whole week, which the market must follow. Yet if you just pick the highest price and say this is the highest price, you are encouraging high bids. And eventually you have a correct true price discovery. And that exchange rate which emerges from that market will be used as a correct exchange rate by the market. So the black market rate kind of survived because of those flows by central bank. The final one is the fact that when you get that allotment, central bank never released the money on time. They take even in excess of 4 months. In some companies which I talked to, it's now in the excess of 6 months. So, but by that time, your cash flow is already been taken, because when you are allocated the money, the allotment is given to you, immediately they take the money from the RTGS. So you are waiting in there as a company, anticipating that at some point in time, anytime from now, you get your foreign currency and you buy your raw materials. So the auction system has never been quite a good market, and the companies now, those who would want to continue to sustain production without fat cash flows, were going to the black market. So the black market became the true market for trading foreign currency. So the auction system has failed. Now my last comment on the auction system. Did you see the rate for yesterday? It was $258 Zim dollar against the US dollar. It just jumped from 173 within a week. Do you think that is a market force? If there was pressure from the market, it tells you that the manipulator has lifted the pressure on a manipulation. Now they want to kind of catch up with the black market. But the catch is that how much money did they allocate? They allocated $6.8 million, which means to say, and they rejected something around $34 million. They have no money. So what are you telling the people? You are telling them to go to black market. So when even this auction was launched, I was very clear that as long as there's no enough supply of foreign currency, it will struggle. Because now those people are going to black market. So what I'm seeing the auction system becoming irrelevant very soon. And when I say very soon, it's a matter of weeks now. And I don't see government having capacity to continue to sustain it going forward.
So what would have been your recommendation in 2020 instead of the Dutch auction system? What would you have recommended?
No, you don't want a market where there's a monopoly of the supply of foreign currency like central bank. You want a market because a true market is with many buyers and many suppliers, right? So you want an interbank, which is working. But yes, I know that when they went for the auction system, the interbank was not working because the banks were not trading amongst themselves. Central bank was supposed, because central bank is the regulator, they were supposed to sit down with the banks and have a framework on how the system is going to work, because the interbank was not working, right? Then they dumped it, right? And they went for the auction, right? Now they are going back to the interbank. So what has changed? It means in the first instance, they were supposed to talk to the banks and address the binding constraints which were stopping banks to work together and to have a proper trading mechanism.
All right. So now the Forex allotment there's a serious backlog that you're talking about, the 4 months, the 6 months. Mm-hmm. But the government has said that they're going to clear this backlog by the end of May, right? A lot of people are very concerned that this is going to include borrowing. Yeah, you remember when they borrowed from Afrexim, right? In 2019, when the RBZ borrowed $1.4 billion. According to the IMF, Zimbabwe's public debt is already in distress and is unsustainable. Are you not worried about the same thing?
I'm more worried about debt when they are paying people whom they are saying were shortchanged at the crossover. Remember when we went into Zim dollar, we're moving from 1:1.
Yes.
That's where we are going to see higher debt. They said they're going to pay $1,000 per person, and some are going to be paid up to $100,000. My worries there are 2 points. The first one is that you are actually assuming debt as a country, and we are going to be adding more debt to the Afrexim bank debt, which is already existing. And as we said in our previous discussion, our national debt now, according to IMF, is $18.373 billion. So it means the target, the prediction by IMF of $19 billion in 2023, right? We exceeded because already we are bringing new debt. But in terms of clearing the backlog, you cannot say when you are a father, you want to go and pay fees for your kids. You tell them that I have $10,000 in my wallet, but I'll come and pay after a month $3,000. Does it make sense? So government is bragging that they have $1 billion as their reserve, but they say we are going to clear the backlog of $300 million end of month. Does it signal the correct information about the availability of money on government coffers? It tells you they have no money. Why are they now allocating 6 million when they used to be allocating 40 million?
So you're saying they're stretching the process?
They are delaying to clear because they have no money. And I even doubt if they will have capacity to clear end of May. And I also have concerns about the small allocations. I'm not saying they must allocate money which is not there. But clearly, as a country, Tendai, to allocate 6 million, the whole week, Central Bank and their team sitting down allocating 6 million to Zimbabwean economy. That is a drop in the ocean. It tells you that we are broke like a church mouse.
Right, that's very concerning.
Yeah, we must be concerned as Zimbabweans. It's very concerning.
But then now going back
so it tells you the fundamentals are not right. Remember the question you raised. Because if you are rich, if you say, I have money, why are you not spending? Why are you not allocating money to companies?
Maybe there are other priorities.
Which priorities? Which priorities, if you cannot allocate money for importation for raw materials to create jobs, to go to meet income, which priorities can you do? And remember, on that 6 million, there's also requirements for health, requirement for fuel. Those are critical things.
So in conclusion, according to you, Zimbabwe is broke.
Zimbabwe is broke as a church mouse.
All right, let's move on to the willing buyer, willing seller.
Okay.
The willing seller reform. They introduced it, they announced it the other day. And at some time, the auction system will also be maintained. And we also have varying parallel rates for RTGS. There's the Eco Cash rate, there's the Zipit rate, there's the Zim dollar, the cash rate. And then the US dollar, there's the interbank. There are so many.
Correct.
I mean, what is the intuition behind this? Because it seems we'll be having multiple exchange rates in the economy.
Yeah, very spot on, Tendai. It's worrying to have government having two markets for one commodity with two different prices. As government, I have not talked about the black market. So it must not be done. You must not have a market where you are trading one commodity, which is US dollar, in two markets. Imagine when it causes distortions, and also it gives opportunity for people to trade in currencies, what we call arbitrage opportunities. It's like, to make it very simple for people who will be watching this, it's like you are running a bakery where you are selling bread with three prices. The lowest price is your auction price, which is now 258. And you have the interbank, which is close to 300. Then you have the black market, which is 450. So the baker, who has got the control of the bread, what he or she would do, will create shortages on that commodity to make sure that he buys it or produces it at 258 and they sell it at 450. So there will be shortages. But if there's one price which is 450, what will be your incentive for holding the bread and then selling it at 450? Because it will remain 450. So there's no opportunity for you to do rent seeking or to create shortages. So government is a trust who are supposed to be focusing on pursuing convergence between the black market rate and official exchange rate. Now we have two official exchange rates. We have the interbank and the auction rate. Yes, of course, I am now seeing that they are now pushing to get to a convergence between the interbank and the auction. But the best thing to do is to close the auction. You cannot say you have in a market, a foreign exchange market of interbank.
And this is your recommendation?
Yeah, that's my recommendation. And it's a very good one for that matter. You cannot have two markets as government. It's like having polygamy in foreign currency. You see?
It just won't work. So one will suffer.
It is sure, when we are watching, just to build on what you're saying, one will suffer. How do we suffer? We watch and we see that there's no leadership in those markets. We create our own markets. That's how it works in economics. We teach students at the University of Zimbabwe about rational economic agents. A rational economic agent is like a rat. When they see that there's too much noise in this area, they go to silent areas in the gray areas and they make their own business. So they are creating artificial platforms for people to find areas for survival. So if you know that
which is the behavioral economics they were referring to.
Yes, because you created it. The issue is not how am I responding. Why did you create it?
People will continue to react.
Yes, because I'm reacting. I'm a rational economic agent. I don't make decisions which are going to be shortchanging me. Rationality is about maximizing returns for yourself. So don't create opportunities for me to capitalize on it, because that's how I survive.
So your recommendation is to do away with the auction and remain with the interbank.
Exactly, but that auction is used. If it is, I want you to get my point that they allocated 6 million.
That's a small amount.
Do you know our imports per year? 6 billion. And you're allocating 6 million per week, which means if they continue on that, they're going to allocate 6 times 52, about 300 million in a year. So they will be allocating 5% of the foreign currency required by importers. So where do you think these people are going to be getting the money from? So clearly, I know, of course, that some will be having their own foreign currency from the export retention, right? But still, 6 million per week. It's a clear evidence. It's like you are running a shop, and initially you had 40 million per week. Now you have 6 million. It means you are getting broke. So how can you sustain that shop? You must close it.
So shall we close Zimbabwe then?
No, Zimbabwe can't close. Zimbabwe can't close. Zimbabwe will deal with it in 2023.
Oh, right,
in July,
okay.
actually.
All right. Well, things are heating up right now. We're going to just cut and go for another break.
Thank you.
Welcome back to our third and final segment. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're here with Professor Mugano talking about the currency reforms that we're experiencing in Zimbabwe. And Professor, let's talk about the suspension. Well, now it's called a suspension on the lending that the RBZ announced last week. As a lot of people were shocked by this, but the bulk of the country, we're not economists and we didn't understand this. But from your standpoint as an economist, what could have been the reasoning behind this announcement that they made?
Okay,
to cut off lending.
Thank you very much. So I'll just refer to the statement by the president. The argument was that and I'll then tell you whether was it the correct argument. The argument was that the financial sector is lending money to private players, which include you and me, and private companies, which is going on the black market, and the rate is running away. So for them to suspend lending, they were, as per the argument, was that they want to stop, according to Dr. Manguji, a tank which was overflowing. Now, was it a correct position? The answer is no. It was not a correct position. Why? Because if you look at the records with Central Bank as of 31 December 2021, $250 billion had been lent out by banks. And out of this $250 billion, 76%, which is $190 billion, was going to productive sector. Right. And the 20% was going to consumptive. People were getting money for consumption. And
which is normal in
which
economy.
Is normal in an economy.
Yes.
And that 20% is $50 billion. Then 4% was going to other categories of lending. Now, one would assume that when the money is given for productive sector, it's not going for black market. That's why you saw that when the lending was suspended, immediately you saw companies, for example, in the sugar industry, in the beef sector, writing letters to say, we cannot advance you any money because the source of the money where it is coming from has been suspended. So it tells you a clear value chain of the money from the banks to the private company to the farmers, right? That is why Dr. Manguja was quick to say these ones are tradable commodities are excluded because it was now getting hot. But now let me look at the consumptive side now. If you are seeing a lending which has been given for consumption, it doesn't mean to say that money is taken 100% of it to black market. No, because you might borrow money for school fees. So once you get the money, you pay your school fees. Or you might borrow money to buy some cement because you have running short of money, you want to finish your house. So it is still productive in nature because you are creating demand for production. But yes, I agree. I know it would be wrong for me not to admit that part of that component of the 50 billion was going to black market. But now, you don't burn the heart because there is a rate which is troubling you. You put a trap through your know your customer, financial intelligence unit must be doing their own investigation, and you deal with the culprits, not to put a blanket suspension of the whole of a sector. Now,
which is what they have now done.
After we made noise, after everyone made noise, it was a wrong thing to do. You don't suspend lending in any economy. Do you know what we call financial service sector? The analogy in finance is the stomach from which the rest of the economy feed on. Now imagine your stomach is taken away. It means you are dead. What they had done was synonymous to fasting because there's no food. Let's fast until we get food. You are committing suicide. Where was the problem? As we started this discussion at the beginning, I told you government is pumping out this year $450 billion into construction and agricultural sector. Before even the budget burst, in many cases, they are budget based. Now look at the rate which has gone up, the official rate from 173 to 258. And the contractors are invoicing government in US dollars and they use the rate. So we are very guaranteed that the payments to contractors will double from $334 billion to $700 billion. And the agricultural sector, the same, they are paying now using a rate, the conversion rate. So it will double from $116 billion to over $200 billion. So government is pumping money. The challenge is with the government. So if they want to close any overflowing tank, it should be government tank which must be closed down. So they closed the wrong tank. Even if, let's say that for argument's sake, the whole $250 billion is going to black market. But the biggest supplier of money on the black market is government with the $450 billion. So you cannot deal with $250 billion. If you cannot see your own problem is government of $450 billion. So this was one of the worst decisions. And, people are abusing the president. I feel sorry for him. Where have you ever seen it, Tendai, where the president makes an announcement uninformed by his cabinet ministers, and the governor of central bank reverses the decision which has been made by the president?
It was definitely a first.
Don't you see that this is now not how things must be working from a governance perspective?
Yeah, it was definitely a first. But now let's talk about the 2% and the 4% that they introduced for withdrawals and that. Yeah. Are we not moving back to a cash economy? And this will reduce government revenue as well as the financial inclusion gains achieved in recent years.
You're quite right, and we have been given permission to go to the cash economy because the best way which the Minister of Finance was supposed to do, if you want to attract capital and you consider foreign currency, even if we are trading it as Zimbabweans as capital, you put incentives. You don't put punitive measures. So he put punitive measures to say, if I'm holding my US dollars here, I'm okay. Because I can give you cash, no 2%. I can transfer it, I can give it to you, no 4%. But when I deposit it in the bank, the moment I want to make a transfer to you through electronic transfer, I'm being charged 4%. But if I come holding $10,000 and I give you, there's no government. So they've actually given us a license and permission to go for exclusive cash economy, and the government will lose money. Even businesses as well. as much they are compelled by Banking Promotion Act to bank money. Business will bank money just apologizing for holding cash, where you're putting little money into the bank and you keep the rest, because there's no anyone who is correct in his mind.
So you're saying we're going back to that system where people used to keep money in ceilings and
we are already there. Because at the moment the announcement is made, how would you go and deposit the money and be punished for doing that?
So authorities, isn't this policy going to compound on the problem that already existed?
Exactly. We're putting poison on a human being who is in ICU already. So we're killing the person.
Okay. Now, the government announced that the dual pricing system will continue as part of the de-dollarization process, while others are calling for the re-dollarization, as public confidence in the Zim dollar it's died. It doesn't exist anymore. In your view, what measures need to be undertaken for us to reclaim economic stability? Like just step by step.
Yeah, step by step. The first one is to repent. And how do you repent?
This is not church.
In economics, we talk of repentance. So what you need to do, Tenda, is that you need to go for dollarization, because we failed on the Zimbabwean dollar side. That's the starting point, because you bring stability. You saw it happened in 2009, where they failed the Zimbabwean dollar. Even if we argue the dollarization is here, it's here. And with this policy which you're talking about, we finished it.
But is there nothing that can be done with the dual system?
There's nothing which can be done, because government does not listen. We've told them what to do for the last 3 years. Now the person is in intensive care unit. You can't arrest the person back to the normal ward and later on to get out from the hospital.
So let's continue with your recommendations.
Yeah, so we need to dollarize, right, so that we can have stability. And after dollarizing, because we need to remove distortions. Once we have a dollarization, we have one exchange rate, 1:1. So we forget about these rates. Right now, they want to chase the black market rate. The black market rate is John Cena. It will reach Olympics from here. Because already they want to chase the black market, but they are giving 6 million. So those who have not been given money will go to the black market. It's chasing your own shadow. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't know what is wrong with our policymakers. To be honest with you, I get embarrassed to even call myself an economist. But there are some of my colleagues who are in government who are doing things which are very crazy, where you think maybe they've taken marijuana.
And you went to school together.
We read the same books, and I don't know which, maybe the books changed when we went to university, but some of them are older than me. But the point I am saying is that this is crazy what is happening. We need to go for US dollar and forget about chasing the black market rate. If the auction had enough money, right, to say if you come to the auction to get whatever you want, they can chase the black market rate. Because you give someone $400 and you give all the foreign currency. Now you raise the rate, you give 6 million. You are asking the same people to go to the black market, and you want to chase the black market. How do you chase it when you are giving it to customers? So it means we failed. So we go for dollarization. After dollarization, we then develop a roadmap for de-dollarization, where these 6 points I've talked about are going to be taken care of one by one. So once you dollarize, you are going to get a single-digit inflation already, because it will correct all these distortions and will go to lower inflation. So at least one in the box. The second one, we are going to have a stable exchange rate because we have 1:1. Are you with me? So it's in the bag. But now we have to fight to have a productive economy, where you need to make sure that the government gets out of the whole command agriculture, government gets out of construction, you bring private sector, they do triple Ps, and you put incentives for that. We also need to use the money from IMF, the SDR. Well, they're abusing it. Do you know how much they put it to Mbudzi roundabout and the other roads? $144 million, fully drawn down according to the Minister of Finance. They put $80 million to put it to Pfumvudza, peri-urban agriculture. How do you put $80 million from IMF to support useless Pfumvudza programs? You rather put that money to production. Do you know how much they put it to production, to the economy for value chains? 30 million. Where is our problem? It's production. You put 30 million, but you put $80 million to Pfumvudza, US, from IMF. You put $77 million to buy drugs for COVID. Yet we have drugs of COVID which were paid by $100 million, which we are told are now expiring. And you are putting more money to buy those additional drugs. To give who? Finish the one which you have bought with $100 million. It's crazy.
So the priorities are just completely
They're
off.
completely wrong. You really see a sense that someone is putting money somewhere to benefit from that money. You see. So we are failing to do the production. Need to have the money. Corruption. Do you know how much we are spending per year? $1.8 billion illicit financial flow, US dollars. $1 billion on average domestically, which is being reported by the Auditor General. $2.8 billion, it's half of the money required by industry to recapitalize in 1 year. And that money, if we go for 2 years, assuming we close all those loopholes, it means we have enough money to capitalize and go to production, and we have a strong currency. So this is what the government must be doing. Yes, I know we cannot deal with the debt overnight, but at least we must deal with the production. We must deal with the current account surplus. We must be exporting more to get more foreign currency in this country. Once we do that, we can now say, let's bring the Zimbabwean dollar. We'll be good to go. But at this stage, government cannot manage Zimbabwean dollar. In fact, I was the first one to talk about this on 25 June 2019 when Mutuli introduced Zimbabwean dollar on a local radio. And I gave it 9 months to expire. And it expired in March 2020.
Oh, that's pretty accurate.
Yes, and even the Victoria Falls, we told the Minister of Finance at the pre-budget consultation that don't do the budget in Zimbabwean dollar because you are going to fail to continue using Zimbabwean dollar in 2022. He was adamant. I was a discussant to the Minister of Finance, Presentation, and the Governor Central Bank. He said he's going to win the war, and he gave us indications of inflation of 25 to 30%. My predictions were very simple. It's on the internet. I said that inflation is going to be 100% by June. The rate is going to be exceeding 400 against $1, and that's where we are. And what happened from Vic Falls? That very same month of November 2021, he paid the bonuses in US dollars. In January, he paid COVID allowance in US dollars. In February, he announced a party payment of salaries in US dollar. Right now, what is he doing? He's now promising to pay 30% of maize farmers in US dollars. Where is he going? He's going to this he's going to the dollar drive, even if he doesn't want. Are you with me?
Gradually, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's like putting a lipstick on a frog to make it beautiful if you want to keep a Zim dollar. You cannot make it a beauty queen. You know, you can only, a frog is a frog, you don't change it. So our Zimbabwean currency is now a frog. We cannot put any lipstick to it and turn it to be a beauty queen.
So we just addressed it as a frog, as the frog that it is.
Exactly. And it must be known that it's not fish.
Okay, so we play a little game here on this show.
Okay.
The previous guest will ask a question to the following guest. It's a blind game. You don't know who asked that question, and you have to answer the question. Okay. So, and then in turn, you have to ask a question to our next guest. All right. So our last guest asked this question. What do you think the president needs to do to just improve on the situation? What do you think he needs to do? No, not only economically, just on Zimbabwe, and give people the comfort, I guess, that they need.
3 things. The first one, you must stop corruption, and you will save $2.8 billion, which I just explained. And that money must be made available for production. And one way to stop corruption is to remove distortions by dollarizing, and we have all our money in one exchange rate, one price, and we are going. And of course, to make sure we are following what Madam Chiri recommended on the audit report. The second thing is production. And already we've talked about production. We need to be a producing country. You cannot open borders to fix your own industry. You need to protect your own industry. You need to support production. When you fail to put measures which are correct, you suspend lending, and companies have been disrupted, you open borders. It's against any tenant of any trajectory for any country from a progressive point of view. I want to spend at least above a minute talking about politics. You know, we want one team, Team Zimbabwe. And the government must always remember that even if you are a ruling party, you need the other side, the opposition, to have unification, to have one common ground. We then do politics when you are doing campaigning. Even if you're not doing campaigning, you create a level play field. You know what? I want to be very clear this from an academic point of view. You know, when we went to election in 2018, MDC Alliance, then led by Nelson Chamisa, had over 2 million voters. ZANU-PF had also over 2 million voters. Clearly, from a quantification point of view, it tells you the government of ZANU-PF cannot make a decision as a monopoly in terms of knowledge and in terms of implementation of policy, because the country is divided into two. Into Chamisa-led outfit, now Triple C, because he was leading MDC Alliance. And they've seen, I will be right, he led Triple C, and when you look at the results of the by-election, it tells you that is the same majority of the people.
The following
has gone with Chamisa, not with the Manzura. Has nothing, you see. So you can't stop them from campaigning. You can't beat them when they are campaigning. You can't arrest journalists who are recording the progress which is happening during campaigning. And when you come to economics now and you say, now support me in the implementation. Because the deal is that when you are implementing policies, government in office develop policies, but the implementers of policies are diverse. It's business, it's trade union, it's civil society, it's everyone to do with anything to do with this, including academics, politicians. Do you know in Denmark, when COVID-19 was wreaking havoc, the president of Denmark brought everyone to the same table, including South Africa. They also had all the opposition on one table, and they agreed on how to deal with COVID-19. But here it's not possible because we fight each other on the streets. So we now have a serious polarization. And the government must never think that everything is ZANU-PF in this country. Never. This is Zimbabwe, which is being governed by ZANU-PF right now. But they cannot govern alone, even if you are in office. The danger now, my last point, is that when you do this, you don't respect governance and democracy. You cannot attract capital. You look at the flow of capital in Africa. Where are we getting highest capital? Look at Zambia. Look at Mozambique. Do you know Mozambique get around $5 billion every year? Zambia get about $34 billion. South Africa, $9 billion. And you see, it goes with the governance system in that country. So capital is timid. So I would want the president to remember, because I respect him for being a liberator. You know, it's the one person whom I envy, that he took it upon himself when he was very young to go to the struggle. And you cannot write the history of Zimbabwe without President Mnangagwa. So he must be sincere, because that thing which pushed him to go to the struggle is that thing which is happening today. He must not let it happen. He must make sure that we are free to talk. We are free to go to the streets and die and say that life is hard. We don't want to see the black boots in the streets because we want to tell government that life is hard. Isn't it hard? Life is hard. And say, keep quiet, die from wherever you are. Then you see on the national broadcaster saying that the demo was a flop, celebrating. What are you celebrating? You're celebrating poverty. So we don't want that.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you ask our next guest?
Look, our next guest, I would want him or her to talk about how to deal with corruption. What are the strategies which government, which comes in 2023, should put in place to deal with corruption?
That's a very good question. That is a very good question, and it stays in line with the How Far campaign of just keeping people in office bearers accountable, advocating for transparency. All right, thank you so much. I'm pretty sure our viewers got a very, very compacted economics lecture and an update on what it means, what the reforms that were announced last week means, and what it means for us as an economy, where we stand and where we're going. Thank you so much to our viewers, and please join us once again next week.